Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Okay, lots to get to in this one. A ton of stuff, as a matter of fact, and some very funny things as well, along with the complete collapse of American education nationwide. One of the cool parts about this past year, and certainly the fiscal year, and I'll get into this in more detail a little bit later, but certainly in the state of Ohio, given the budget that was released during the summer, as it typically is every single year. And again, that's not unique to Ohio. It's typically that way in every state across the nation when it comes to the Ohio budget. But as it turns out, at least 75% of all Ohio schools are having to make serious cuts. And this is a good thing. Again, they're not always cutting the things that they should be cutting, but they're at least making cuts, which again is perfect because they always overspend. Anytime they get a little bit of extra money, anytime a levy passes, they spend like drunken sailors, and then before you know it, they say, oh, wait, the times have changed. We didn't see this coming. Now we have to make cuts. And again, instead of even making cuts in certain situations, they run right to the ballot box in an effort to get a levy on the ballot to tax individuals instead of course, just firing the individuals that they didn't even need in the first place. And again, some of the cuts that get made across the board, regardless of the school district, should prove to people how much they not only overspend, but how much they actually bring in that they actually don't need. And it happens all of the time. These schools could stay afloat if they had a good product, if they had good customers, and if they knew how to balance their own budgets, but they don't. Not to mention the illegal alien aspect of all of this, and well, a lot of them are getting deported, which means their enrollment numbers are dropping. Again, I love it, but I'll get into that a little bit more later on in this episode. I want to start here real quick. Again, even though this is education related, but it's certainly worth mentioning. In previous episodes, and certainly on Substack, when I put together that particular article about the Upper Arlington board member, Nadia Satiani, I believe her name is. I mispronounce it all the time, don't really care, but either way. When I put that together, of course, a number of individuals reached out to me in that general area who were familiar with what was going on. And then I ended up, again, throwing that article together. But now, apparently, which is a good thing, that article's made its way to their local news outlets, and they're looking to apparently start to discuss this on the local news even more, which is a good thing. I had Amy Wattis of ABC 6 and Fox 28 there in Columbus, Ohio, reach out to me. And it looks like, again, she's willing to talk with anybody who knows what's going on about it. So here's my recommendation. If anybody, again, lives in that general area and you live up there and you have more details, of course, than I do, which means you probably would, because, again, whatever's in the article is basically all I know, you're going to want to reach out to her. Her email is awadas@sbgtv.com. And her phone number, is 614-551-6661. And she reached out to me on Substack and again said, "Hi, Sean, my name's Amy Wattis. I'm an anchor and reporter with ABC 6, Fox 28 in Columbus, Ohio. We were sent your Substack about Carter Riddell and the whole situation going on there. I'd love to chat with you more about the incident as we are looking into it further." Basically, there's nothing that I can provide her that isn't already in the article, but what I did do is I gave her the lawyer's phone number and the lawyer's contact information, who is the lawyer of the family. My recommendation, of course, is that Amy reach out to them for specified, detailed comments about it. And again, any citizens up there who are more familiar with what actually happened regarding that entire situation, you should reach out to Amy also and let her know what's going on. Again, if they're putting together a story about this Satiani woman, that's a good thing. And hopefully, again, it's fair, direct, and puts her right in the limelight. Because if she wants to be famous, well, this is a great way to make her famous for all the wrong reasons. So just wanted to make mention of that real quick. And again, reach out to that Amy Wattis if you can, if anybody's up there, and that'll help. Okay, back to geopolitics here real quick. A couple of things I want to read. I threw together a quick little Substack again. This was an anonymous post that was made on greatawakening.win, and it made complete and utter sense to me, so I figured I would turn it into a Substack and just push it out there and let people chew on it for a little bit. But it was titled, "Save Israel for Last. the strategic blueprint behind a fifth-generation endgame. While this specifically is discussing Israel and Iran and all of that back and forth and everything that's taking place, and again, I've sort of explained the much larger scheme I think that's at play here, but I want you to take Greenland into account with this also, because I think that this too is the exact same game plan that's being played with Greenland. If you take the playing board out from underneath the game players, so to speak, and I'm talking specifically about the New World Order crowd, and all of those, again, globalist moneylenders, and we know who they are, and all of that. If you take away their playground, then they have no place to play. And if you tell them that you're going to take it away from them, then all you have to do is stand back and watch them panic and do what they do. And we know that one of the better things that they do, as awful as it is they, of course, invade foreign countries with illegal aliens, specifically dark ones. We know that that's the case. But if you can take away, again, these other areas where they're playing and other areas where they have a strategic foothold or at the very least some level of control, again, like Greenland, and you openly say, no, we're going to take it. We're going to buy it. This is what we're going to do. And you just muscle your way around. Then again, they panic the way that they do. They run to a microphone, start telling people particular things. You can't do that. We'll stand up against you and blah, blah, blah. And then they always end up backing down because they just don't have the strength and they don't have the force. Again, the people of Greenland don't want to be affiliated with NATO, and they don't want to be affiliated with Denmark. They aren't interested in that. They've already been polled numerous times. Again, they want no part of it. They would rather be a part of the United States. And of course, Canada doesn't like this either. Well, why is that? Very close to Canada. Again, what are we talking about here? Are we talking about weapons? Are we talking about child trafficking? Are we talking about human trafficking? Are we talking about drugs? Are we talking about, a bigger scheme of some kind? It's probably all of the above. But either way, with, again, Greenland aside, but keep it in mind as I'm reading this, because, again, very similar patterns, I think. Here's what the anonymous post said, and I said this beforehand. I said the following post was made anonymously on the chat board greatawakening.win. It expands on and explains in their own opinion a long-discussed post on the Q board that stated the following, and it was post 916 on March 10th of 2018, where an anonymous individual posted the following. They said, whatever happened to this Pakistani guy who worked with the DNC? The president asked in an interview published Thursday by the New York Times. A grand jury in August returned an indictment in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia charging Awan and his wife, Hina Alvi, with a total of 4 counts, which included federal bank fraud and conspiracy. Awan has pleaded not guilty to all charges. And then they said, whatever happened to them? Trump continued. That was a quote from Trump back then. He said, with the 2 servers that they broke up into a million pieces, what happened to him? Unquote. And then the person asked, what about Awan? Is Israel involved? And then Q replied and said, we are saving Israel for last, very specific reason, not mentioned a single time. So here was the particular breakdown that this anonymous individual had. They said, number 1, the core doctrine. Save Israel for last was not restraint. It was betrayal of the corporate power structures hiding behind Israel's flag. It was a master stroke of sequencing. Wait until their utility expires, then cut them loose. Strike Iran too early and you unify the regime. Delay too long and Israel's deep state survives behind its role as regional linchpin. The only path forward was to starve both in sequence. Victory wasn't about brute force, it was about denying enemies their lifelines. Iran fed on foreign threat. Israel's corrupt elite fed on Iran. You collapse one, then expose the other. And that alone is exactly what's happening here. Because the Lindsey Graham types, as you might recall, wanted war in Iran. So did John McCain. I mean, this goes on all the way back. They wanted to carpet bomb the damn place. Kill endless citizens. Again, mosques are coming down in Iran and churches, and Christianity is spreading. Zionists and Jews don't like that. Number 2, it says why you can't bomb an ideology. Iran's regime survives by framing itself as the victim of Western and Zionist aggression. Every time it gets attacked, it tightens control, crushes protests, and extends its shelf life. Let me add on to that too. There was an individual, again, affiliated with Iran. I don't know if it's the president or somebody else, but he was openly saying on Brett Bayer's show, and I think I included the clip in the last war video, he was openly saying that Zionists are in Iran and they're the ones shooting protesters. That Jews are over there shooting them, and then, of course, telling the media that it's the Iranian government shooting protesters and killing them in the street. Which one do you believe? I mean, I can take a pretty good guess. But anyway, it goes on. They said military strikes rally the people, bury the opposition, and buy time for tyrants. That's the loop. To end the regime, you break the loop. You withhold. You let it rot in plain sight. Number 3, Israel's role in the loop. Israel's hardliners built their doctrine on existential threats. Strike first, show strength, never wait. But with Iran, the strategy becomes a trap. Hit too soon and you rescue the Ayatollahs. Give them a war and they win. So Israel had to be held back. Their corruption wasn't just tolerated, it was used. Their restraint was not mercy, it was a setup. Number 4, the Waltz leak, circuit breaker. In March of 2025, U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz created a signal group, chat, to coordinate sensitive military operations related to upcoming strikes in the Middle East. He accidentally added a journalist, Jeffrey Goldberg, every single time, editor of The Atlantic, to the private operational chat. That chat contained real operational intelligence, strike timing, targeting logic, and critically, Israeli human intelligence exposure tied to Yemen and Iran. Once that information was exposed, it couldn't be walked back. Iranian counterintelligence immediately treated it as a gift. Using metadata communication patterns and tradecraft overlap, Iran rolled up Israel's HUMINT networks, tied to the planned strike architecture. The human layer that made the war possible was burned before the war could start. This did 3 things at once. It made the Israeli strike operationally impossible. It forced Israel to stand down without a formal U.S. order, and it prevented a June 2025 war that would have unified Iran internally. That war plan was designed to trigger unrest and regime collapse. Instead, the exposure killed the plan, preserving the internal collapse vector. The leak looked like incompetence. Functionally, it acted as a kill switch. Whether Waltz was reckless, manipulated, or simply the delivery mechanism doesn't change the outcome. The strike died. Iran didn't get saved by a war, and the clock kept running. And it says number 5, sequence of collapse from 2017 through 2024. Number 1, there's 6 points here. Number 1, cut the outer tentacles, ISIS wiped. Syria boxed, Soleimani killed, Hezbollah bleeding, proxies disrupted. Number 2, collapse the narrative Abraham Accords, broke the resistance axis, Iran stood isolated. Number 3, financial strangulation sanctions crushed Iran's economy. Internal unrest grew, legitimacy shattered. Number 4, shut down the forever war, Afghanistan exit removed, the excuse for endless Mideast intervention. Number 5, reveal the corruption loop, Ukraine aid scandal exposed, and pipeline of dirty money through fake wars. And number 6, Waltz leak, halts Israeli strike collapse, vector preserved. Internal rot continues, no nationalist rally. It says number 6 then, the 6th sort of subchapter of this, why Israel had to wait. Because if Israel acted early, Iran survives. And if Iran survives, Israeli intelligence remains untouchable. You can't expose Mossad's compromat networks, Epstein's handlers, or AIPAC's blackmail leverage while Iran still looms as an existential threat. So the threat had to be neutralized first. Only then does the shield drop. Then it says, number 7, the lock is lifting. Iran's regime cracking, protests, economic collapse, IRGC in disarray. Israelis Military posture shifting, no longer restrained, now sharpened. U.S. is silent, no warnings, no delays. Arab partners not condemning but coordinating. Everything says the final move is approaching. Number 8, it says when Israel becomes expendable. Once Iran's nuclear infrastructure is gone, Israel's strategic leash is severed. No more excuses, no more cover. Mossad becomes fair game. Epstein files drop, AIPAC unmasked, deep state influence exposed. The same intelligence agencies used to manage the threat are now the threat. They are no longer protected. And again, you can see that that particular phase is already happening because of everything that AIPAC is doing, everything that the ADL is doing, the censorship, all of it. They're panicking because they know that the walls are closing in. And again, as I've said before, and as you know, when people wake up to actually who the real enemy is, who the puppet masters are, and who's behind the curtain, you don't fall asleep to that anymore. It goes on here, number 9, what Q really meant. Save Israel for last, because the timing had to be right, because they were next. Take down Iran first, then go after the ones who needed Iran to stay alive. And number 10, it says the Epstein stall was strategic. The Epstein files sat sealed for years. Why? Because you can't burn an active asset. You don't drop Mossad's entire blackmail archive while you're still sharing regional intel. You don't collapse your partner until the job's done. Now that job is almost done. Once Iran falls, those files become evidence. No one will be able to scream national security, quote unquote, anymore. No one will be able to block exposure with claims of existential threat. And number 11, finally, it says Iran collapsing. Israel primed for final use, then justice. U.S. silent because the play is live. Region aligned for cleanup. Next, Iran falls, then exposure. We didn't just save Israel for last, we saved the truth for last. Because after the last enemy falls, we turn inward and nothing will stop it, unquote. Again, I believe the Post, without a doubt. The analysis of it is right in line with the evidence of what we've seen. Again, you take somebody like a Thomas Massie, for example. He either knows what he's doing and he's working with the good guys to scream Epstein files at the top of his lungs. And he really knows the hidden agenda behind it, that when he does that, other Democrats will join in and openly say, we need to release all these files. We need to release all the names and the interagency and intercountry and intercontinental connections to everything and blah, blah, blah. And we have to do all of that now. But as the person said in the Post, you don't release evidence of a crime until you catch all of the criminals first. Then you release the evidence, then everybody can see it. But what's interesting is all these people screaming for those Epstein files and everything else, they're screaming for more evidence, which is fine, because what it's really doing is it's tricking people to scream for evidence that implicates them. So again, if Massey's part of the plan, then that's a pretty good person to have as a part of the plan. But if he's not, and he's just screaming it because he's turned into a one-issue person, well, then that's too bad, and he's going to get left behind. So I don't know about that necessarily, but I just agree with the Post. I think, again, that the evidence points in that direction, and that's why most people are pretty tight-lipped about the Epstein stuff. Again, we know all of the connections already, but once the American people figure out that the politicians that they all voted for are directly tied to all of this, well, then they're in for a rude awakening, and that's going to be fun to watch. Now, because the flavor of the month, by and large, has to do with Somali fraud in Minneapolis, and we know it's not just there, it's, of course, everywhere, there's a level of fraud and welfare fraud and government fraud that, of course, takes place also among Hasidic Jews. There's a particular video that I would encourage everybody to watch. It's over on YouTube. It's on this individual's channel. His name is Tyler Oliveria. There we go. He has 8.66 million subscribers, and his video, which came out just a few days ago, is titled Inside the New York Town Invaded by Welfare-Addicted Jews. He goes around town, and he's interviewing these Hasidic Jews, and he's openly saying, okay, how do you make your money? And they're all lying. Every single one of them. Again, they have multiple children. They live with one another. They claim, again, to be in construction and education and brokerage and this, that, and the other, and you can just tell that they're lying. Again, they get government handouts all of the time. So when you hear Somali fraud, please understand that individuals, again, who are Hasidic Jews by and large, certainly the ones that live in very concentrated areas like New York, they know exactly what they're doing. And they're actually kind of pleased that people are focused on Somali fraud because they don't want people focused on their fraud. Again, this video is as bad, if not worse, than Nick Shirley's videos on Somalis in, again, Columbus and Minneapolis and everywhere else. Because these individuals, again, these Jewish individuals, they too also have a very similar racket going on and have for a very long time. So it's not an accident that his video is not quite getting shared as much as everybody else's, certainly when it comes to Nick Shirley and Somali fraud. But please understand it's not just limited to Somalis. Again, I'll link that in the description below if you're interested in checking it out. Okay, now speaking of ICE even, this is something, again, that has created a massive debate and an argument among local governments, including, I'm sure, where you live too. Whether you're aware that the arguments are taking place or not, they certainly are. And this is one of those instances, I think, where these different levels of so-called government are starting to figure out that their job isn't quite as easy as they thought. Not to mention, they're starting to figure out what their real responsibilities are, and sort of in perfect meme fashion, they're all behaving like that Spider-Man meme, where Spider-Man is pointing at Spider-Man while also pointing at Spider-Man, while all the Spider-Mans are pointing at one another. And they're all blaming one another for one thing or another, and it certainly, in this particular case, has to do with ICE and who has the contracts that give, again, local authority to ICE to come in and then, of course, detain people. Now, here in Butler County, Ohio, this was an article that was tossed my way from the local Tri-County area newspaper, the Journal News, and it says, "Who has ICE contract authority in Butler County?" And again, in typical fashion, the subtitle says, quote, "We do not tell other elected officials how to run their offices," commissioner says. Now, here's how this article goes. Again, it's rather quick, but this is funny nonetheless. It says, "Do the Butler County commissioners have the legal authority to cancel the county's contract with Immigration and Customs Enforcement to house detainees in the Butler County Jail?" Quote, "They had the power to enter into the contract, and they did, and they also have the power to terminate. They have not. It is their call," unquote, said Butler County Prosecutor Mike Moser, said of the commissioners. It says the Butler County Jail houses inmates from county jurisdictions as well as those in cooperation with the U.S. Marshals Service, and the Bureau of Prisons. As of Thursday, January 15th, there are 950 total inmates in 3 jail facilities. In addition to regular inmates, there were 358 ICE detainees, 143 U.S. Marshals prisoners, and 2 from the state prison system. The total approved capacity, according to the variants, is 1,244. Having the ICE contract has been lucrative for Butler County Sheriff Richard Jones. When he first re-upped the contract, the per diem rates were the same, but have increased 54% since. The daily federal rate increased from $68, which was in effect for many years, to $105, and the transportation fee jumped from $36 to $47. Finance Director Vicki Barger said they received $10.2 million in boarding and prisoner revenue last year and $4.37 million from the ICE contract. They have received $739,583 in ICE revenue so far this year, and another $1.1 million is on the way. Yeah, locking up criminals is good business. Go figure. It goes on, it says, Commissioner Cindy Carpenter continually tells the public at the meetings they won't step on other elected officials' toes, particularly the sheriff, by canceling the ICE contract. Quote, "Our role as commissioners is administrative and fiduciary, budgeting appropriations, and ensuring that contracts and agreements are legally sound, she said recently. Quote, "We do not tell other elected officials how to run their offices, and we do not use our administrative authority to make political statements," unquote. Commissioner Don Dixon and Rogers are more direct. Dixon said, contrary to what some believe, they are not doing it for the money. Quote, "We don't need the money," unquote. They are doing it because they believe it is right. Yeah, it is right. The money doesn't hurt. Might as well have the money too. Quote, "The contract is up to the commissioners, and we have had it for years, and I have no intention of canceling it," Dixon said, adding the claims about bad conditions are false. "It's something we provide, and we've always provided for Butler County." Rogers has said repeatedly that there is a need to rein in the throngs of illegal aliens flooding the country as well, and, quote, "We're not going to cancel the contract," unquote. And then, of course, it's got two conflicting pictures, one with people standing around holding signs that say ICE equals domestic terror. Then another one says, "End ICE for good, stop ICE terrorism." It's not terrorism. And then, of course, another person is holding a sign that says, "Thank you, ICE." Again, these people are so backwards. The individuals who believe that law enforcement is terrorism. The only terrorism is aiding and abetting people who are breaking the law and engaging in fraud and stealing from people. That's terrorism. And the people holding signs supporting those people, well, they're not terrorists. They're just retarded. It's that simple. Now, this is going to slide right into education here. First of all, this again shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody, and it was making the rounds at the end of last week and certainly over the weekend. But this was from Resist the Mainstream, and it was titled "Nation's Largest Teacher Union Caught Funneling Millions to Radical Left-Wing Organizations." I'm not going to get into the article because it shouldn't shock anybody, but the National Education Association, of course, spends hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars and launders it basically to, again, hard left-wing organizations within states. Probably Lead, Ohio is one of them, if I had to take a guess, certainly in the state of Ohio, because they work to get radical school board members onto school boards. But they're not the only one. There are thousands of these groups, and certainly these NGOs and these limited liability corporations and everything else. And that's what they do. They have a hard communist agenda. That shouldn't shock anybody. And they steal. And that shouldn't shock anybody either. But this is also, again, why the business is collapsing. More people are finding out about this. And then, of course, the people that align themselves with the NEA, those are the only ones that are left within the entire profession. The pink hair crazies, the blue hair crazies, all these individuals, again, who don't read, who don't think, and operate solely on emotion, being drug around by the back of the neck because of the latest, greatest news story or whatever it is. When that's the only thing left in the business, your business will fail because your product sucks and your customers don't like it and your customers aren't getting all that they can get. Certainly not from an honest standpoint, certainly from an instructional standpoint. So again, the business of teaching feelings instead of facts, when that becomes your product, that's a failing business model. That leads me to this now. When these kinds of people take over these kinds of positions and behave the way that they do, they almost always get caught, and then they get fired. And then it's embarrassing for them as educators, so to speak. I'm using that term loosely and with huge finger quotes. But the school gets embarrassed, and everybody who affiliated with the individuals, of course, is embarrassed because, again, no one's learning from, again, this kind of behavior. You have these liberal women always taking to TikTok or Instagram or whatever, filming themselves doing or saying very radical things that someone in the teaching profession certainly should not be engaging in. But there were these two Propel school teachers, these two females, who were videoing themselves crossing their fingers hoping that someone in Iran assassinates Donald Trump, something along those lines. Again, they've now been fired. They were placed on administrative leave, and now they've been cut loose. So again, I don't understand why they aren't learning. I don't understand why they're on social media. And I don't understand why they think that they can keep getting away with this kind of thing. and behaving in this kind of manner? Again, it's probably because the business tells so-called educators to get on social media. The other thing that it tells them to do, of course, is be a left-wing radical. Be a member of a union. It's okay to be a communist. And then, of course, when they combine all of that together in video format and put it out there for the public to see, they don't think for a second about any consequences. Here's just a couple of quotes. It says, quote, "We are taking the situation seriously and we take appropriate action based on the findings of that investigation. Any suggestion of harm or violence toward any human being is completely unacceptable," so said the Propel Schools. It says, "We want to be clear that Propel Schools rejects any suggestion of harm or violence toward anyone. Such sentiments are incompatible with our values and with the responsibility entrusted to educators who serve children and families," and blah, blah, blah. Of course, they have to deflect from the fact that they hire these kinds of people. Again, their vetting process is not very well done, and they certainly don't look at these individuals and say, okay, do you have a presence online? And if they say yes, then they say, well, let me have your social media pages. Let me see exactly the kinds of things that you say and the way that you behave. This is based out of Pennsylvania, by the way. Propel Schools are Pennsylvania charter schools. So again, if anybody was curious, this isn't just a public school problem or a private school problem. It's a charter school problem. And they hire the same kinds of people because they have the same kinds of curriculum and the same kinds of ideologies. But again, they're not learning. You could have 100 people in one day in the profession get fired for this kind of behavior. And then the very next day, people will do it again who are in the profession. It's amazing. So yeah, now Propel charter schools in Pennsylvania are getting a bad rap, and they should, because they don't know who they're hiring and they don't seem to care. Where's your professional development? There is none. Certainly not when it comes to stuff like this, because again, they're all communists. They have to be. If you're not telling people to not behave this way, then you're sanctioning that kind of behavior. Now you have this. You have this winner of a human being, Isabella Obradovich. If I'm saying her last name right. Yes, she's Jewish. Anyway, this information regarding this gal was sent my way, and I did see a video of hers, I want to say a couple of days ago, and I thought, oh God, okay, there's just another leftist whack job yelling about ICE and their ideologies and whatever else, and then I just moved past it. I had no idea that this gal is a student at Miami University right here in Oxford, Ohio, and she is. And apparently she was just removed from her middle school art student teaching placement for these online videos that she has. And I threw together a Substack about this, and it is incredible. I'm going to play these two audio clips of her, these two videos that she's made of herself, and frankly, I know it's superficial to say, but when you take a look at this broad, she is an art project in herself. She looks like a child's art project. She again took to her social media and she made a couple of videos. Here's the first one. Give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Last year, I posted a video in which I showed an email I sent to Wayfair when I rejected them because I refused to work with a company that collaborates with ICE and sells them products to further their inhumane operations. Fuck ICE, fuck Wayfair, and fuck anybody else associated with ICE too. There were kind of a concerning number of people in my comment section who are entirely deranged and will now give more money to the companies doing genocide and human rights violations. I don't want there to be detained children. I don't want people to be shot point blank in cold blood while they're trying to drive away. I don't want people to be killed. I don't want anything more than to abolish borders. Where you were born shouldn't have to determine what your life's prospects are. And you should never be punished trying to improve your life for yourself and your family. Abolishing ICE is the neutral position. I refuse to associate myself with the fascistic actions of our government because I think it's disgusting. Anyone and any company, any institution continuing to work with them, I don't want to be associated with your brand. Please stop reaching out to me. How dare you continue to believe your shitty furniture's profits will ever be worth more than the lives being taken by the just deplorable institutions you choose to associate yourself with. Fuck Wayfair, fuck ICE. I'm covering the name of the marketing rep who sent this to me though, because I'm sure they're working through some outreach agency and they don't have a choice over emails that they're sending out for influencer outreach. Pro workers' rights here. Except if you work for ICE though. If you work for ICE, I think you should kill it.
And it cuts off right there, because of course she said if you work for ICE, you should kill yourself. That's nice. Here's the next video. Again, things didn't go in the direction she was hoping. She has plenty of excuses. She claims now that she's been removed from her art student teaching middle school position as a Miami University student, that now, of course, she's not going to graduate with certification, which she doesn't care about, she says. She says she's going to move back to France because she speaks French and has dual citizenship. She's going to go into graduate school in the future and blah, blah, blah. Good for her. Don't care. But she decided to take again to her social media and create this video based on the aftermath and the predictable response. Give her a listen again in 3, 2, 1.
Hi, my name is Isabella Obradovich, and on Tuesday, January 13th, at around 11 in the morning, I was escorted out of my middle school art student teaching placement. I have a script that I'm going to be reading from because I want to be very careful with my words. On Tuesday, January 13th, at around 11 in the morning, I was escorted out of my middle school art student teaching placement. I was informed that the district received several complaints from concerned parents about the video I posted the day before. In the video, I spoke about turning down a sponsorship from Wayfair as they sell beds to, quote, a government contractor furnishing a federal detention center for migrants near the U.S.-Mexico border, end quote. In this video, I said, fuck ICE. And at the end of the video, I put up my middle finger while saying that I believe that ICE agents should kill. I could certainly have chosen my words better and avoided using vulgar language and gestures, but my stance remains firm. I stand on the side of humanity and will not endorse any institution who supports ICE. I have chosen to keep the video visible on my page. My values and actions are always rooted in a deep love for humanity, including love for my own community members as a first-generation child of French and Peruvian immigrants. Members of my community are actively being killed and kidnapped en masse by ICE, a rogue paramilitary force that answers to the child rapist and 34-time felon who is currently president of the United States. I stand by my message, even if my choice of verbiage could have been more tactful. For full transparency, I've posted the email I sent to the district yesterday following my termination. Thankfully, I have the privilege of not needing to student teach in order to graduate. I've chosen to not pursue another student teaching placement since I figured similar issues would arise considering the size of my audience on social media. I don't want to comprise neither my values nor those of any school district. I will graduate without licensure, which I was not planning on applying for anyways because I don't intend to teach in the United States for the foreseeable future. I have the full support of my professors, which I'm so grateful for. Since around January of last year, I have been making arrangements to move to France after I graduate in May 2026. I'm a dual citizen and have been speaking French since before I even learned to speak English. I'm going to be fine. I plan to work as an artist for at least a year before continuing on to grad school. Also, I have enough credits to have graduated last semester because I've just taken so many classes for fun because I love school and learning. I'm very lucky that my circumstances have made it so that this situation has no real material repercussions for me. Of course, I am really disappointed that I won't get to student teach. This is something that I've been working towards for the entire time that I've been studying art education as an undergraduate. I really did give it my all in the 5.5 days that I had in the classroom. I had an absolute blast, and this experience has affirmed that I do want to teach art and that this is the path for me. It's just really unfortunate that this is how the experience came to an end. I want to respect the privacy of the district as I believe the crux of the issue does not lie with them directly. The problem is with the system at large, where education is treated as a personal investment, where the parents are the investors with the power to pressure teachers and even entire districts into capitulating to their personal beliefs. I've also made the decision to keep the district's name private in order to prevent this situation from harming Miami University's relationship with them. The last thing I want is for student teachers to have even more difficulty finding placements. This is a very rural area, and there's already not such a large selection of districts and schools available, and I don't want to jeopardize the placements of any future student teachers. A lot of folks have asked for my Venmo or GoFundMe, and though I really appreciate your concern and am truly grateful to know that my community has my back, I don't want to accept donations. Actually, student teaching is an unpaid internship. I'm not losing any income due to this ordeal, thankfully. My wish is that you donate any amount that you considered sending to me directly to Yazan and Mahmoud's families. They are living in occupied Palestine, surviving a genocide, and they need your help way more than I do. I also sell prints on my website, and 100% of the net proceeds of my prints for Palestine are donated directly to their families. If you still want to support me directly, though, I have prints and original pieces of art on my website. Our struggles are interconnected, and I know that I stand on the right side of history. I know in my heart that looking back on this moment in 20, 25, even 50 years, that I'll be proud to have stood for what I know to be right. I'm only going to resist even harder. As Egyptian Canadian American author Omar El Akkad says, one day, everyone will have always been against this.
Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I mean, she's right about the Palestine thing. However, she's wrong about everything else. And I mean everything else. And I have to tell you something. Well, I'm just going to put it this way. I pity this woman. I truly do. It's, this is the compassionate part of me, I suppose. I could make fun of her all day long, every day. Again, one look at this lady and you'll get exactly what I'm saying. But this is a perfect example of a vessel of stupidity. She does not know how the world works. She has no grasp of it. She's never grown up. She is, again, all about art. Her drawings, again, look like a child draws them. She's not really an artist of any kind. She's just a political ideologue. And the reason that I pity her is because she doesn't seem to understand that when she falls for the latest thing, and she decides to do that, and doesn't know, of course, because she's brainwashed, that she's being used and taken advantage of, that she will not survive. Again, she's making political causes of which she knows very little about her life. She's making all of that about her entire existence. Very one-dimensional. And again, trying to infuse that in some art class, or not infuse it in some art class. And again, this is the problem with the profession, is that the people in teacher education departments are not telling the individuals who are pre-service teachers that they would do well to not have social media pages. And that if they do, then they can count on parents or anybody looking at those social media pages. And if there's something on there that could get them in trouble, well, they would do well, again, to delete the page or the video or the post or whatever. But they're not doing that. They're encouraging pre-service teachers to behave this way. She is the product of the roots of the business. And this is exactly the rot that it produces. It produces an individual yelling into their cell phone about subjects for which they know nothing about. And then it costs them, again, an ability, of course, in this particular case, to gain licensure. But let's not kid ourselves. If she was in the district as an employee, specifically Talawanda, and I'm assuming she was a student teacher in Talawanda. I'm making that assumption. I don't know. I've made an open records request to obtain that information, so I'll get my hands on it eventually. But if she was taken out of Talawanda Middle School, Talawanda did a pretty decent job of hiding the information. If she was in another school, that's fine. I'll find that out too. But if she was a paid employee at some point in her life and she had done this, she would have been fired unless, of course, the district would have supported her. Again, the case of Danielle Mann is a perfect example. Danielle Mann actually said far worse than this gal, and she kept her job. Danielle Mann's post-election videos went viral on mainstream media, Gateway Pundit. I mean, again, she took to TikTok and told people that they should stay away, told girls specifically to stay away from all boys who identify as being conservative or MAGA because they're rapists. She's a nutbag, but she's still employed. See, this is where the business uses discretion, and they selectively pick who they want to keep and who they don't. Clearly, a student teacher is expendable. What the business doesn't understand, certainly, again, the queers and the left-wingers and all of them who run these districts, they have no idea that a Danielle Mann is expendable too. And that getting rid of her and putting in somebody with a brain in their skull is a better idea. But again, it's just discretion. And they wield it very unfairly all of the time. So again, that statement that she read in that last video there, that was basically an email that she sent to Miami University and whoever else that she sent it to. Probably the school district itself, whatever. But, okay. So what? Again, no one explained to her that all it takes in the education business is for one parent to complain. That's it. And then you're done. One either logical or even illogical parent blowing something out of proportion, or in this case, analyzing it accurately, and then filing a complaint, and then, of course, they make a move. But then, of course, everybody distanced themselves from that kind of behavior. Miami University keeps it quiet, and they distance themselves from it because they don't want people to think that they're just sending these people into a buzzsaw, which they are. They're literally training them to be unsuccessful. That's what the university environment does, certainly when it comes to teacher education. They're not teaching them to actually remain in the business. They're teaching them to show up into the business and then get their head lopped off for unprofessional conduct. Happens all the time. There's no return on investment. It's kind of my overall point. There's zero return on investment in this, and she's a prime example. In fact, let me keep going on this gal, this Obradovich gal. Again, rather foolish of her. She puts her resume on her website, and her website's hilarious. I mean, you talk about, again, a complete tool of the system here. It's ISA, let's see, www.isa-Obradovich, abradovich.com. It's amazing. In the About section, here's what she says, quote, "Throughout my whole life, I've found great joy in learning and conveying knowledge from my experiences to others, whether it be in the form of teaching visual art, tutoring in French, Spanish, or Russian, teaching figure skating in my community, or educating about arts, entrepreneurship, and marketing, whilst providing them with resources to develop their own artistic careers." It gets better. "As a first-generation neurodivergent, disabled, queer, and Latina pre-service art and TESOL educator, I am deeply passionate about furthering accessibility and inclusivity in the world of education. I use my platform of over 2 million followers on my social media art accounts to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts, LGBTQ plus rights, anti-racism, and general awareness of social justice issues around the world, and take my online efforts to the on-site world by continually advocating within my local community." Now, here's the fun part. She apparently was given a 2025 National Pre-Service Art Educator of the Year Award by the National Art Education Association in Louisville, Kentucky. And in her resume, she has listed who she substitute taught for. And yes, she substitute taught for Talawanda School District in 2025. She also apparently gave lessons at Kramer Elementary School in the Talawanda School District, the same building where Jason Mers worked. Shocking, I know. Which means, again, she was most certainly a pre-service teacher at Talawanda Middle School. Bravo, Talawanda, for keeping this one quiet. Too bad it didn't work. You see how hard they work to keep something like that quiet? Something like that. Someone like her? What makes anybody believe that they wouldn't try to keep quiet a principal in Jason Mers who is accused of sexually assaulting a minor in a bathroom stall? They certainly would. It's their MO. It's their job. Across the entire nation, school districts specifically, are having to engage in massive cuts to their budgets because they are overstretched. They're in the hole big time. And when they go to a levy and the levy fails, well, then they're really in deep trouble. But even when they go to a levy, they're still in deep trouble. And that's certainly the case here with Hamilton City Schools in Butler County, just down the road from where I live. Again, this was the actual school district where I conducted my dissertation research, and their entire district is now in deep, deep shit. So this was from the Journal News, and this was also sent my way, and then I have a piece of audio of the superintendent that I want you to hear because, again, this poor gal, she looks like she can hardly tie her own shoes. But it says the following here. The Journal News spoke with Hamilton City Schools Superintendent Andrea Blevins the day she rolled out a budget plan that included big reductions throughout the district. To align its spending with available resources, the district will make staff cuts, specifically a 12% reduction in district and building administration, a 10% reduction in teaching staff and Hamilton Classroom Teachers Association members, 21% reduction in clerical staff and educational assistants, with some employees potentially shifting to BCESC preschool roles, a 10% reduction in food service and custodial staff, and a 17% reduction in miscellaneous positions. It has also proposed the following large-scale operational changes beginning next school year, in the 26-27 school year. Port, Riverview, and Crawford Woods elementary schools. They're closing an entire building, shutting down the standalone Hamilton High School freshman campus, and transitioning ninth grade students into the nearby main high school building. The fate of the building is still to be determined. Consolidating Hamilton's preschool program to Fairwood, which will be operated by the Butler County Educational Services Center, and outsourcing nursing services to the Butler County Educational Services Center while still ensuring the direct nursing services are provided in each school building. They're in debt by $10 million. So here's their superintendent, and listen also to what she says at the very end. I can't believe she actually uttered this, but she did say it. So give her a listen in 3, 2, 1.
I believe that our plan provides the most sound, unfortunate situation that we are in. However, we believe that our plan provides the most sound decision making that doesn't go back and ask for an additional ask in our community, but still keeps our quality high here in Hamilton City Schools. Is we have been making little right size. I equate it to driving down the highway. You're constantly making adjustments. So every year we have been. The reason why this is such right now a dramatic cut is because the funding changed over the summer for us. So prior to the new biennium budget that was voted in this summer, we were suggested, or we were going to deficit spend by $1 million. That is something we can adjust, without having to do large scale cuts. However, the changes that were made related to the Fair School funding formula this summer took that from a $1 million deficit spend to almost a $5 million deficit spend this year. Well, we didn't know about that until July, August. We couldn't make those decisions in August as we started a school year. So our board was committed to going ahead, and we do have cash reserves that allow us to overspend, knowing that we were going to have to come up with a plan to address that. This year was that negative $5 million, as you saw in the presentation. Next year, that number jumps to 10 because there are no static costs in education. Everything from bus fuel to staff salaries to paper costs go up on an average scale. We also have negotiated contracts with our employees. I don't think that the community realizes how much the Fair School funding formula changed from the month of June to August. And that changed especially in school districts like us. So every community has a different formula or mechanism, equation for how they're funded. In Hamilton, 80% of our funding comes from the state. 20% comes from our local property tax. Actually, in Hamilton, we are at the lowest legal limit that we can tax our community. The lowest legal limit in Hamilton. So what happens at the state has a dramatic impact on our school district more than other communities. Every community has a different formula for that particular piece of, there are communities that border us that are the exact opposite, that are 80% property tax driven, while 20% state foundational payments. So that change over the summer completely changed our trajectory. I think it's really important that we analyze our current spending. While this plan they are drastic changes. It's really not affecting the overall student quality or experience in our schools. We're not cutting transportation. We're not cutting extracurriculars. While there are staff impacted in that, most of those cuts are lowering our overhead and still providing great experiences. We're not raising class sizes. We're not cutting options for students. So by doing these first cuts, that should be to our community, hey, we are doing everything in our power to keep the quality of our schools high while lowering our overall operating expenses. Long term, we are going to have to go back to our community, and our community is going to have to be a part of deciding what quality do they want in their community schools. And there's lots of conversations right now around property tax. That was another reason that our school board wanted to wait and see what happens with some of those things. The worst thing we could do is go out and ask for money, but then there's something that changes and have to go again. We have always in this district been extremely frugal and understanding of the hardships in our community and trying to provide a great value at the lowest cost to our taxpayers. We like to keep our community neighborhood schools intact as long as we humanly can, and have been downsizing quietly as we could through attrition from 4 sections to 3 sections at every grade level. But now we have buildings. The only building in our school district that is still sitting at 4 sections per grade level is Ridgeway Elementary. Every other building in our district has seen those declines that we have managed as much. But now I think it's important as a fiscal manager to be fiscally responsible to say, hey, there's additional savings by combining these schools, knowing that next time I don't have that type of ability to consolidate or to make some of this room that we're able to capitalize on right now. I say to our staff that, and I think they know this, we have had extensive conversations with them so that this is not a blind side for our staff. They know the financial conditions have changed. We had a numbers of staff and community forums, but our support for those staff members don't change. This is not a want, this is a need. We will handle that with humility and help in any way. Every person that I will speak with will have my personal guarantee that I will help them try to find another position. But unfortunately, we do have to run our school district as a business. And these are decisions we don't want to make. I'm sorry that we're in this case, but it's at no fault of our district.
No fault of their district. She says she doesn't want to have to go to the people, but don't worry, she's going to end up going back to the people because they have to decide what kind of a school they want. Well, I think they know what kind of a school they want. They don't want one that overspends, which means why on earth would anybody vote for a levy? Why would anybody do that? Why would anybody vote to tax themselves? Again, I've been over it 1,000,000 times. It makes no sense to me. I do not get it. They spend like drunken sailors again. They don't know what they're doing. They invite endless programs of which they clearly don't seem to be cutting programs. They're just cutting people. Again, are they taking salary reductions or are they just cutting particular positions? They're probably just cutting positions, not actual salaries. Of course, the salary goes with the person. I fully understand that, but they could take a pay cut, but they're not going to do that. And they don't want to take their precious programs away from their precious students because they think that the programs are so necessary. No, they're not. Again, the business is telling people that the program matters more than the person. The program matters more than the employee. But they hire too many people anyway, and they have too many programs anyway. And anytime there's a cut like this is where, again, they exactly show you all of the people and the programs that they never even needed in the first place. But again, they gaslight people into believing that they're all necessary. Well, this is the changing times, and it's politics' fault, and it's state legislatures, and it's not our district's fault. It has nothing to do with us. It has everything to do with you. Your inability to manage your own money is your problem. That's your problem. It isn't anybody else's. Learn to say no. Hey, look, here's a new technological tool. Here's a fancy new toy. Say no. We don't need that. We don't have money for that. And they're also, of course, experiencing a dramatic decrease in enrollment. More people are homeschooling. That was a part of a previous article regarding the same story in the same school district. More people are homeschooling. More people are utilizing online education. And don't forget the illegal aliens, because they're being shipped up and they're being shipped out, which means, again, their enrollment is dropping from that standpoint also. And that's happening nationwide too. Again, I wrote about it a long time ago, but now it's finally starting to come around. And isn't it interesting? They're not going to mention that. Not going to be like, well, ICE is in our town, and a lot of the children and the students are leaving the school because they're having to go back with their parents to whatever sandbox they came from. So unfortunately, our enrollment is dropping, but we're going to have to consolidate buildings. Yeah, because you allowed undocumented people to be students there, and you didn't think there were going to be any repercussions for it. Well, you reap what you sow. So too bad for you. Here's another one. Dr. Luther Smith sent this my way, the Kansas City Star. This is on Yahoo News. Facing $14 million budget crisis. KC area district to cut 70-plus jobs, close school. It says, facing a budget shortfall of nearly $14 million, the Hickman Mills School Board approved a series of sweeping cuts Thursday night that will close one school building and eliminate dozens of district contracts, programs, and positions. See, that's how it's supposed to be done. You get rid of contracts, you get rid of programs. You don't go to the people, you don't even fire people necessarily first. You look at all the technological nonsense that you have and you get rid of it. Truman Elementary, it says, will close its doors starting in the 26-27 school year with all students attending class at Alvin Brooks Elementary School, no relation. All 7th and 8th grade students at Alvin Brooks, no relation, currently a middle school, will move to Hickman Mills Middle School. Meanwhile, the district will shift its model for middle school education with Santa Fe Elementary converting into a 6th grade center, and its students rezoning to one of the other 6 elementary schools in the district. Interim Hickman Mills Superintendent Dr. Dennis Carpenter said that without significant cuts like those approved Thursday night, the district would likely need to shut its doors entirely within 2 years. Yeah. Quote, what was not on my radar when I got here was the fact that the district's finances were in shambles. That's great. See, here's the funny part. It's a school district. You should assume that their finances are in shambles. Just make the assumption. But they aren't doging their own school districts. That's what has to happen. Yes, the product sucks. Everybody's brainwashed. The curriculum is a lie, blah, blah, blah. We know all of that. But the money is what keeps it even there existing. Let alone, the bad product is contributing to the downfall, clearly. But if you can't pay the bills, well, then therein lies your issue. Carpenter inherited an $11 million budget deficit at the start of the school year. Abrupt changes to the Jackson County property tax system, which accounts for a significant chunk of the revenue in Hickman Mills and other districts, has brought the district's total debt closure to $14 million, Carpenter said. The cuts will save the district just under $13 million, with more than $9 million in operations and staff cuts and more than $3 million coming from the elimination of Truman. More than 70 staff positions will be eliminated district-wide. The article goes on, and it's very long. I'm not going to read the rest of it because, again, you can get the gist of it. This is happening nationwide. This is going to continue to happen. Having public schools is not lucrative. It doesn't benefit hardly anybody. It's the illusion of it benefiting people. Because look what it's become. It's a daycare. It's a government feeding apparatus. It provides food to children, and it provides transportation from them to, again, attend the government daycare. It's not setting people up for success. If an individual decides to go to college or even, again, into the workforce, it's not the K12 environment that really prepared them for that. I've been over this before, but that's why they don't do longitudinal studies regarding satisfaction or preparation for, again, a future job or society or XYZ. They don't do it because they'll never like the results. Polls exist showing that, of course, but there's never going to be an actual study. It'll never occur. And this next story here is a perfect example as to why that'll never occur. This was from back in December. And this was just sent my way also. This is from the Washington Free Beacon. And again, absolute abomination, this particular story. But it was titled, "This Has Gone Way Too Far." Videos show bizarre sexual ceremony that elite Amherst College pushes all first-year students to attend. The event, Voices of Amherst, quote unquote, is paid for by the administration and takes place in the school's chapel. And again, the pictures are disturbing. They're sexually related, without a doubt, mimicking fellatio and other things, transsexuals, the whole thing. Let me get into this just a little bit here. Amherst College was founded over 2 centuries ago to prepare young Christian men for the ministry. Today, however, the prestigious college has become a hotbed of administratively sanctioned sex performances and sexual skills programs, and a focus on queer and transgender students, and on free sex practices, it says, such as polyamory, multiple sexual partners. It says the graphic nature of the school-sanctioned sex events has made many current Amherst students deeply uncomfortable, according to students who spoke to the Washington Free Beacon. Amherst in central Massachusetts is one of the country's most exclusive small liberal arts colleges. The acceptance rate for the class of 2029 was 7%. The annual tuition plus room and board exceeds $93,000, making it the 6th most expensive college in the country. And it's clearly one of the worst, thereby, of course, showing that money does not equate to intelligence nor effectiveness. Every year, first-year students are instructed as a part of orientation to attend an event dubbed Voices of the Class, in which they are familiarized with Amherst's code of conduct, quote unquote, through a theatrical performance scripted using out-of-context excerpts from their own admissions essays. It says an entire section of the performance is dedicated just to sex. The event takes place in Johnson Chapel, which Amherst calls its most important building, and is used for worship services, convocations, senior assemblies, and other significant gatherings. Johnson Chapel displays 36 portraits of the college's most notable figures and alumni, including all 19 former presidents of the college, influential trustees, clergymen, civil rights leaders, poet Emily Dickinson, and former U.S. President Calvin Coolidge, who all likely would have looked on in horror, if they saw the event on August 31st, 2025. It says on the chapel's chancel, students performed mock sex acts, including oral sex, masturbation, and group sex. A young woman bent over while another student pretended to penetrate her from behind. Others pretended to do drugs and shared their high thoughts, quote unquote. These videos, by the way, are all over YouTube. Titled, again on the Washington Free Beacon's YouTube channel, Amherst Program 1, Amherst Program 2, Amherst Program 3, a bunch of stuff. Every first year was urged to attend the performance by their orientation leader. The administration advertises the event as a lighthearted tradition to celebrate the humor, creativity, and individuality of your class. The school funds the performance, and Amherst administrators work closely with the student performers, offering feedback and approving the script. Yeah, it's sexual grooming. And wouldn't you know it, the individuals who put the whole thing together, by and large, are Jewish and Muslim and Indian. Go figure. What are the odds? It's basically the gayest college in the United States, at least in Massachusetts, and that's saying something, because they're all gay. But yeah, it's terrible. Again, I'm going to end it there with that article, but the article is long, and they bring the receipts. They show all the flyers, the drag shows, pictures, the whole thing. Faculty members, again, giant conversations about sex and sex toys and the whole thing. It's terrible. And shame on the parents for sending their children there. I mean, they might know what they're getting into, but they might not. It's communism, ladies and gentlemen. That's communism. Certainly one of the many components of it, but that's it. Normalizing perversions, and it's satanic. There's always that element as well. Okay, I'm going to end with this, speaking of satanic, and the devil, of course, being the father of confusion. The medical confusion that exists regarding quote-unquote COVID and the shots and cures and whatever, medicine, hospitalization, the whole thing. The confusion that surrounds this entire scheme, which of course is a depopulation agenda and it's working, is astounding. And it continues, and it's being printed, again, in medical journals with regularity. Case in point, hot off the presses here, January 2026. This is from PubMed, an observational study in epidemiology, National Library of Medicine. And this was titled the following: Open Safely. Effectiveness of COVID-19 vaccination in children and adolescents. Now, before I read this, and again, it's a sexual term, but you get what I'm saying. I don't mean it that way. But this is basically what I would call a scientific circle jerk. And what I mean by that is you're taking something that doesn't exist and you're testing it up against things that don't exist by reactions that occur with human beings, medically speaking, that are certainly real, like being poisoned from the shots. But it's all based on something, again, that does not exist, and then their so-called prevention is not a prevention, which means it doesn't exist. And then their medicines and cures don't exist, even though they exist, but certainly not by definition. They're not real medical cures nor preventative measures. And then they look at all of that, and then they say, well, it's not really having an impact one way or another. That's why it's a scientific circle jerk, because they're going around in a circle wasting their time. And this proves it. The abstract, it says background. We assess the safety of the effectiveness of the first and second dose BNT162B2. How many times have I said that on the show? COVID-19 vaccination, offered as part of the national COVID-19 vaccine rollout from September 2021 in children and adolescents in England. Methods. Our observational study using Open Safely, TPP, included adolescents aged 12 to 15 years and children aged 5 to 11 years. It compared individuals receiving 1, the first vaccination, to unvaccinated controls, and 2, the second vaccination to single vaccinated controls. We matched vaccinated individuals with controls on age, sex, and other important characteristics. I like how they didn't say gender. It says outcomes were positive SARS-CoV-2 tests, adolescents only, and COVID-19 accident and emergency, A&E, attendance. So A&E stands for accidents and emergencies. COVID-19 hospitalization, COVID-19 critical care admission, and COVID-19 death. With safety outcomes, A&E attendance, unplanned hospitalization, pericarditis, and myocarditis. Results. Among 820,926 previously unvaccinated adolescents, 20-week incidence rate ratios, IRRs, comparing vaccination with no vaccination, were 0.74 for positive SARS-CoV-2 test, 0.60 for COVID-19 accident and emergency attendance, and 0.58 for COVID-19 hospitalization. Among 441,858 adolescents who had received the first vaccination, IRRs comparing second dose with single vaccination were 0.67 for positive SARS-CoV-2 test, 1.00 for COVID-19 A&E attendance, and 0.60 for COVID-19 hospitalization. In both children groups, COVID-19 related outcomes were too rare to allow IRRs to be estimated precisely. Across all analysis, there were no COVID-19 related deaths. Whoops. And fewer than 7 COVID-19 related critical care admissions. Myocarditis and pericarditis were documented only in the vaccinated group. with rates of 27 and 10 cases per million after the first and second doses, respectively. Conclusion: the Pfizer shot vaccinations in adolescents reduced COVID-19 accident and emergency attendance and hospitalization, although these outcomes were rare. Protection against positive SARS-CoV-2 tests were transient. Unquote. Summary and translation. The COVID shots don't prevent anything because there's nothing that they were designed to prevent, because they weren't designed to prevent anything, because COVID doesn't exist. There's no such thing. COVID was not created in a lab. The COVID shots were created in a lab, which are poison. That poison was injected into people, and then that poison is shed on from the injected to the uninjected. And then the injected shed on the injected. That's it. The injected continue to take injections, and then they get sick. And then they increase the likelihood of their hospitalization. And again, the tests test for nothing because they were recalled in the summer of 2021. But people still use them today, including hospitals. Well, you tested positive for COVID, so you have COVID. And then they say, here are the drugs you should take, of which, of course, ivermectin is not one of them. They use the standard pharmaceutical drugs like Paxlovid and other drugs. That's why it's a complete waste of time. It's one thing that's not real, being bounced up against something else that isn't real, being tossed up against something else that isn't real. It's a drawing of a picture of a hologram over and over again. And the hospital system still believes it to be this way. They still believe that the thing that they're doing is fine. So yeah, hospitals are still killing people, ladies and gentlemen. It's still happening. And even with studies like this, where it openly says again, vaccination harms people, doesn't seem to be preventing anything. Well, there's your answer. Thanks for listening as always again, and I'll catch you on Wednesday. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.